The COVID-19 pandemic has certainly put a toll on many people, especially when it comes to those planned trips, including fishing trips just north of the American border out to Canada. But now the Canadian border is set to reopen for fully vaccinated Americans in the beginning of August. I'm bringing in Dan Lehmann as we talk about getting ready for fishing trips in Canada. And so, Dan, let's just first kind of get into how you have been handling this COVID-19 pandemic. Obviously, a lot of your business comes from those Americans coming up to do their fishing trips each and every single year.
Well, certainly in our part of Canada and in Northern Ontario, virtually all the resorts are reliant on Americans. And so we've been doing kind of the same thing everybody else did. Last year, completely shut down. This year, trying to ramp up slowly, hoping the border would open. And obviously we did get that okay to open on August 9th. Now it's just getting our guests aware what the restrictions are, what the requirements are, so that they can cross the border without any issue. Certainly they're traveling from all over the US. They don't want to get to the border and then be unable to get across.
Yeah, so let's just kind of go over that. Fully vaccinated Americans can cross the border coming August 9th, but they do have to have that second dose done at least 2 weeks ahead of time. And that also means that they have to have proof of the COVID-19 negative tests as well. There's a lot of things that they have to do to get things in place. What are you hearing from some of the people who have their vacations booked with you guys?
It's kind of mixed. The majority of the people are vaccinated, and then they're past their 2 weeks, so they're good there. And we're just making them aware of exactly what kind of test they need to take, which is that 72-hour PCR test or 72-hour window for their PCR test. They can't take any quick tests like an antigen test. That's not going to work with the customs agent. Canada has a nice little app that you have to use. You have to go on and register on ArriveCan, it's called. You're going to let them know exactly when and which border crossing you're going to be at. That way they're at least a little bit prepared for who's going to be there and when they're going to be there, because I'm sure there's going to be some long lines those first few days.
And for some people who may not be familiar with the environment that is in Ontario for fishermen, let's just kind of describe what you guys have up there, because it can be a lot of great fishing that you can get done in Canada.
Yeah, it's really a great area, and being someone who grew up in Minnesota and was used to those Minnesota lakes, as soon as you cross the border, it's really a different experience. You're either going to see bigger lakes like the lake that we're on, which is Lake of the Woods. Really lots to water to get out and fish on. Some 14,000 islands, creating all kinds of great structure and fishing opportunities. Then you're going to see other places a little bit different than us, but still in the same general area, really remote lakes, either difficult to get to by any kind of road, but a lot of them are going to have fly-in only, and those are great experiences too. Very different in this part of the world in that it's there's not homes surrounding the lakes, and it's a real pristine environment.
Yeah, and it just seems like, too, as you mentioned, the environment's different, but then also the fish there seem to be a little bit different. What are people catching when they're doing these fishing trips with you at Duck Bay Lodge?
So most of our guests are going to go out guided because the fish are certainly moving around the lake through different structures and different depths, and then they're switching species. So here on Lake of the Woods, muskies are the big trophy fish that people want to come and fish for, and it can be elusive. They don't tend to gather in groups like other species do. They'll just be like one in a small area, and they're very territorial. So the guides are great for putting you on those. And then of course people are wanting to come up and walleye fish, smallmouth fish, fish for other pike, and at least turn some of those into to shore lunches.
Right. There are some restrictions then, of course, on what you're able to bring back to the U.S. But I'm sure when you catch it and you have it that same day or that same evening, there's nothing quite like being able to eat that fresh fish that you just caught that day.
Yeah, that's definitely popular. The guides here at Duck Bay Lodge are going to not only put people on the fish, but lunchtime rolls around, they're going to take care of preparing everything, and it's as fresh as it can be.
So let's just kind of talk about ways you guys are now preparing for these visitors to come back. Obviously, you've had to do a lot of conversations about these restrictions and what things they're going to have in order to be able to keep that reservation with you guys.
Yeah, so for them, we've really tried to send out as much information as possible and really make sure that they understand what's going to be expected when they get to the border. Have questions coming in where you're really not sure where they're getting that information. You know, they're concerned whether or not if they get into Canada, are they going to be allowed back into the U.S. because the U.S. isn't ready to let Canadians across. But of course, that's not going to be the issue for anybody who's a U.S. citizen. If you show up at the border and want to come back, you're going to get back into the U.S. And then the other things, just like we've been doing across the U.S. and Canada, there's lots of little protocols that will still be in place for, dining and things like that, and we'll be prepared to do those as requested by the province.
And you can only hope that then once September rolls around, even more restrictions start to loosen, that you guys are able to continue to have these guests come. And I'm sure that you encourage people who aren't able maybe to get that second dose of their vaccine to make the trip this year. You say, hey, plan ahead, because that's what a lot of these fishermen have to do, is that go into next year's reservations.
Yep. So I don't think we've had really anybody cancel permanently. If anything, this year isn't going to work out for whatever reason. Either they're not vaccinated, or people in their party aren't vaccinated, or they're concerned about getting that PCR test and getting the results back, because you have to have those results when you get to the border. And virtually every one of those who hasn't been able to make it has just pushed their trip to next year, because it's getting up to this part of the world and making these trips it's special for them. Many of our guests have been coming here for decades, and one lull of a couple of years isn't going to stop them from getting up here in the future.
Right. Yeah, I know. As we chatted before, my dad, a huge fisherman, loves to take trips up to Canada. As you said, it's just a different environment. You get to really dive into some of these great bodies of water. So hopefully people can continue to do so, not only into this fall, but also plan ahead for next year. And Dan, just want to say thank you for joining us here on Live Now from Fox. I hope that people are able to get their doses ahead of their trip to come see you at Duck Bay Lodge.
Me too. Thanks for having me.